Hello friends and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about the only books that I have ever read twice. And to me, this is a very special, a very specific kind of video because to me, a reread isn't inherently interchangeable with your absolute favorite books or your 5-star reads. They're similar, but if you're rereading something, I feel like it's for something very specific. And so these are the books that either gave me those 5-6-star feelings or they were just so comforting and so sweet that I absolutely loved them and just had to read them again. And also we're only going to be talking about the books that I've reread within the last 5-ish years. And then at the end of this video, I want to talk about the books that are on my reread TBR. So these are the books that I haven't reread yet, but I plan to. The first book that we're going to be talking about in this video is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. The real ones know, the people who have been around on this channel for a while know that I absolutely love this book and this series. This is the adult fantasy novel that got me not only back into reading, but more specifically back into adult fantasy. I have always been a huge fan of magic and fantasy in all my books. I was a big Harry Potter kid, a big Percy Jackson kid, and I don't know, I kind of forgot about that for years when I stopped reading. And then my college roommate recommended me this book. I read it and I just fell in love with fantasy. For anyone who's not familiar with this series, to make it very brief and concise, we are following our main character Kel, and Kel lives in a world where there's not actually just one world, there are multiple worlds, kind of like parallel universes. Each world has a different amount of magic in it. This series is just so fun, so magical. It's a trilogy and I'm obsessed with it. I reread it a year or two ago because I just wanted to see if it had that same effect from when I read it the first time, and it absolutely did. This is also on my reread TBR. I want to read this a third time, probably at the end of 2025. Highly recommend if you guys have not checked this book and series out by V.E. Schwab. I want to stick with fantasy for a little bit, and then I don't think the rest of the books in here are fantasy, but the next two books that I'm actually going to talk about that go together are the first and second book in the Throne of Glass series. So when I was a junior in college, for context, I am now 25, but when I was a junior in college, I had been hearing so many things about the Throne of Glass series, and I started these books and I absolutely loved them. Then I started the third book, and then life as a college student is just absolutely crazy, absolutely insane. And so I literally just DNF'd the series, not even really on purpose, just life kind of took over and I forgot about them. Years later, and by years later, I mean 2025, I was like, oh my God, that series was so good. Why did I ever stop reading it? And so partially because I absolutely loved these books and wanted to experience them again, I picked them up in I restarted this series in 2024, and I'm now currently reading the final book in this series, so kind of full circle. But of the whole series, as I think I've made clear at this point, these are the only two books that I reread, and I absolutely love these books. Like, this series is just the most magical thing that I've maybe ever experienced, in that you're spending so much time with the cast of characters, and throughout the 8-book series, the world that you get to build and be a part of just becomes so intricate and so precise and so beautiful, and it is just an absolutely wonderful series. And I feel like the thing about these books specifically is, upon a reread, there's a lot of things that the author sets up very early on in the books that become very prevalent later in the series. And whilst I've only ever reread the first two, there were already several things in these that I could tell that the author was setting up that I didn't notice the first time through reading them. So now that I'm about to finish these and probably be completely heartbroken that this series is over, I already know that in a few years I'm going to want to reread these again. But honestly, if I've read them twice, why not read it a third time? These are amazing. The next book that I want to talk about is also probably coming at no surprise to the besties who have been watching my channel for quite a while now, but that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I love this book, like this story in particular. I love Emily Henry as an author, but this book, I just resonated with it so deeply. I felt like, and I know that a lot of people felt this way, but I did too. I'm one of the masses. Harriet, our female main character in this romance book, her struggles that she has, her challenges that she has, the like interpersonal dialogue that we get to read about from her, I just felt like I was reading a character who experiences the world and takes in life the same way that I do. And the male love interest in this book, in some ways, not in every way, but in some ways, is extremely similar to my real life love interest. There were just so many different elements that I connected to. The setting was beautiful and it is emotionally gut-wrenching. Like, I cried heavily both times that I read this book. And upon my reread, I don't know if it's going to focus, but upon my reread, I did a very heavy annotation of this book, which is actually a theme for some of these. I should just show you now. Oh, that's weird. I didn't annotate Throne of Glass. That's surprising. But yeah, there's like a lot of books in this video that upon a reread, I did a very thorough annotation of them. And this is one where it takes everything in me not to pick it up again. Like, there are so many other books that I would absolutely love to reread, but all that my heart wants to do is just pick up this book and connect with these characters. Now, as I said before, these books are only the books that I've reread within the last 5 or 6 years, okay? And so there's a few series, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, I've read them multiple times, but I did not reread them in my adult life. However, there's one series that's extremely OG that all of a sudden I just got this intense craving to read, probably like 3 years ago. And I binged the entire series for a second time. And that series is none other than the Selection series by Kiera Cass. This is a dystopian bachelor. Basically, it is so much fun, especially upon a reread. I could tell why I loved these books so much as a kid. There's so many things about our main character that make her like a little bit different and make her stand out from the rest of the girls competing in this competition to become the queen of, or the princess, the queen of this world. And there's rebels and there's just so many fun elements. I will say though, as an adult, I've learned that I don't particularly love a love triangle, and that's a huge part of these books. And so if we're being so completely transparent in this video, I loved my reread. It was very nostalgic, but I can definitely acknowledge that these are YA and definitely made for people who love a love triangle. And I do not. Highly recommend, but it was definitely a different experience as an adult. There's literally only 2 other books, guys, that I have reread in the last 5 years. And the next one that I want to talk about is one that's very special to me, and that is The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I love this book. I, to my core, am a Halloween girl, okay? I love the fall. I love pumpkin spice lattes. I love witches. And specifically, I love Halloween, okay? Those feelings that Halloween reminds me of, like those childhood spooky feelings, are my favorite in the whole entire world. And so when I heard about this book and the fact that it was the epitome of a Halloween town, that we're following witches, that there's a curse, that there's a romance, everything about it made me so excited to pick it up. And I read it perfectly timed during Halloween several years ago. And this is like the only thing that I can think of that has brought back those childlike spooky season feelings, like that giddiness, that true fall feeling. This book brought it back to me. And so I love this book so much that I was like, I absolutely need to reread this one day. And so last year I did do a reread of it. I will say this isn't like a perfect book. I don't love the romance in here. I don't love the writing. However, the atmosphere is everything. I don't think I'm planning on rereading this book this year because the author has actually come out with more books in this series. And so my plan is to continue on this series so I still kind of get the novelty, right, of a new book and all the amazing spooky season vibes. And so yeah, I loved this book. So sweet, so perfect for fall. All right, we have one more book out of all of the books that I've ever read, which is quite a lot at this point, that I have reread somewhat recently, and then we're going to talk about my reread TBR, and that book is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I absolutely adore this book. I think I might have even read this one 3 times, if we're being so for real. And I think I read this for the first time in 2022 and it's 2025, which don't know what that says about me or what that says about this book. It's again completely covered in tabs. I still have them here for the next time that I read this book. And I love this book. I think it's so sweet. In this story, again, I know I don't want to dive into the plot of all of these, but just for context, it's a then and now timeline of our two main characters, Macy and Elliot, and we watch them fall in love in the past timeline and the present timeline. That it's all through the lens of like the love of reading and the love of words and that kind of thing. And as a reader and as someone who loves to just like romanticize friends to lovers, this was perfect for me. Again, I want to read it again this year, but I have all these books that I want to reread. So I'm like, I probably shouldn't read this for a fourth time. But it's so good. So again, those are all the books that in the last however many years I have reread. And again, they're not like my perfect 5-star reads necessarily. Some of them are, but others you just know how they're gonna make you feel. You know maybe what time of year to read them in. And I just got the urge to pick them up again. So now I wanna switch gears and I wanna talk about all of the books that I'm hoping to reread in the near future. I do feel like a lot of people have issues with rereads because you don't feel like you're accomplishing anything new. You're not adding to that long list of books that you've read and things that you've accomplished. But when you find a book that you love, why prevent yourself from ever experiencing that kind of joy again? You know, I'm trying to work on that right now. So without further ado, let's talk about all of the books on my reread TBR. Something seems like off about saying reread TBR. Reread to be read. You know what I'm saying. You know the vibes. The first book and probably the highest priority book that I have on this TBR list is Beachread by Emily Henry. I have been an Emily Henry reader since 2020 when this book came out. I was, dare I say, one of the early adopters of Emily Henry and her books. And so when I read this book, it came out with Book of the Month. I fell in love with it. And for years, this was my number one favorite book, period. Then Happy Place came out and it kind of upped it. I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's my favorite book. So this is currently my Emily Henry ranking number 2. It's our second spot. But I haven't read this in 5 years. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I think of this book now? Is it going to create those same feelings that I got when I read it for the first time? I think yes, I really do. And I think I'm honestly going to relate more to this now than I did when I picked it up for the first time. And so I'm hoping to very immediately read this during summer. I'm currently on a mission to finish my physical TBR of all the books I haven't read, but this might be my reward. I might want to pick this up as soon as that's done. This next series that I have been getting the itch and the urge to reread, I do not own, and I haven't talked about it on my channel very often, but that is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I feel like these books were going around YouTube and going around TikTok years ago, right? They got super popular and then Six of Crows got super popular and I feel like everyone kind of forgot about Shadow and Bone, right? If you're not familiar with these series, these are again a YA fantasy series. They're so much fun. We had the Shadow and Bone trilogy come out and then later there's a duology that follows this trilogy, okay? And that duology is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. You don't have to read the Shadow and Bone trilogy before reading Six of Crows. However, I am of the opinion that you absolutely very much should. I love the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I love the characters that are in there. I love the world. Everything about it was so fun and so magical. Again, I'm not really diving into all the plots today, but trust me, if you have not picked this up, let this be me reminding you that these books exist because they are so good. And I'm starting to get to the point where next time I see these books at a bookstore, I'm gonna buy them because I want to reread them so bad. Like every time I see them, I'm like, oh man, I want the feelings that these books gave me. And I think I've forgotten enough to the point where it's really gonna hit again. You know, like there's definitely still gonna be surprises because it's been such a long time since I've read them. Continuing with fantasy, we have Fable by Adrienne Young. I love this book. This is like my go-to underrated fantasy book. I know that Adrienne Young has quite a few books out now that are a lot more popular than this one. However, I read this book again, probably like 4 years ago, maybe. And I just absolutely love this book. It's very nautical. We have a main character who dives for like magical gemstones, and it is so good. And again, this is kind of, I don't really think of summer as the time of year to read fantasy, you know? I'm kind of usually leaning towards my light, fun, fluffy romances, but this book is the perfect summertime fantasy. And if you like anything on the sea, nautical pirate fantasy, which is a very oddly specific thing that I really, really love, highly recommend. And as we're approaching the summer months, I think that's kind of what's giving me the urge to pick this up again. And I've talked about it a couple times in videos recently, and I keep being like, oh my gosh, like, I should reread this because I don't remember all the details, but I love this book. Then our final fantasy book that I want to reread is actually the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. And this is an interesting one because when I read this series for the first time a couple years ago, I enjoyed it. However, I was of the opinion that this series was not quite worth the hype that it was getting online. I think I gave the first book a 3, the second book a 4, and the third book a 3. Like, they were decent, but I wasn't obsessed with them. Like, I've seen a lot of other people be obsessed with these books online. However, the way that I have continued thinking about these for years after, they've stuck with me in a way that a lot of other books have not. And so I'm starting to question, like, is this actually a series that I liked more than I thought I did originally? I'm not kidding. All of the time, these characters come to mind. This plot line, this romance comes to mind. It's very different from other fantasies that I've read in that it's extremely whimsical. There's not a ton of world building, and the main character, Evangeline, in here is just such an optimist, such a romantic, and I just loved the way that she saw the world. I also loved our love interest in here, Jax. It was just so fun and sweet and made me really happy. And I think maybe that's why I get the urge to reread these books. The fact that they're just so light and fun and happy, and they don't take a ton of like brain power or anything like that. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I all of the time get the urge to pick these books up and reread them. And again, I don't really understand why that is, because I wasn't drop dead obsessed with them when I read it for the first time, but I always want to pick these up again. And so they're kind of towards the top of my list of books that I want to reread. So we'll see if I get around to those, but they're so on my radar, which I feel like is the biggest kind of plot twist of this video. How I just want to know how I would feel about them now. We have 2 books left, and these are kind of getting into territory of books I rated incredibly highly the first time around, haven't stopped thinking about them, and I desperately want to read them again, okay? This first one I'm not going to talk about very long because I've talked about it in a very recent video, but that is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. Yes, was this an OG booktok, booktube book? Yes. Did I pick it up kind of not knowing anything about it? Also, yes. And did I freaking love it? Yeah, I did. I think when I read this for the first time, I gave it a 4.75, so essentially a 5-star. However, as the years have gone past, I've continued to think about this book, and it's kind of just become like a 5-6-star read in my mind. I remember really connecting with the romance in here and the characters. I loved that both of our main characters have been through like a very unique struggle, if that makes sense, and they were able to connect to each other through the things that they've been through in a way that just made me feel like they were such a perfect fit for each other. I feel like sometimes when you read romances, the characters seem like they belong together because of the author's ability to write banter and to write tension. But then there's other romances that you read where it's like, if you take a close look at the characters and who they are and how compatible they are with each other, you feel like they would just end up together. That is these characters in this book. And so again, I didn't own this book. I borrowed it from my sister when I read it years ago. And recently I picked this up at Half Price Books because I want to pick this up again. I want to read it again. And I'm just so curious. Again, that's kind of the pattern, that I want to know what I would think about this years later. If it would be a 5-star read for me, I don't know. And again, I think there's a lot of things that I've forgotten now that would probably really resonate as an adult. Then we have one more book to talk about, and I love this book. I'm so glad that we're ending on this book. And that book is none other than The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Guys, hold the phone. Hold the phone. If you haven't read this book yet, what are you doing? This was a 5-star read for me in 2024. I absolutely loved it. It was my second Ashley Poston book, and to me, it was the perfect combination of romance and magical realism. The setting in New York was absolutely perfect. I loved our characters. I loved the story. Just everything about it was so perfect to me. And it kind of has become this book in my mind where every time I pick it up, it's just a warm hug. However, it's a warm hug that's also going to make you cry. And those are all my favorite books. I mean, I'm looking at the stack next to me. Happy Place made me cry. Archer's Voice made me cry. Beachread, Love and Other Words, this, the Throne of Glass series. Like, they've all made me cry because, you know, you're so happy and emotionally invested in the outcome of all these characters. And then when things inevitably get hard at the end of the book, it breaks you apart. And that was this for me. I just sobbed my way through the ending, which again, I don't think is the experience for everybody, but I just absolutely loved this story. It's funny, actually, my book club voted to read this book a couple months ago, but I didn't want to reread it quite yet because I had just read it. I wanted to give it like a little bit more time to, again, kind of allow my mind to grow and develop and go into it with bit more of a fresh palette or a new perspective. I didn't want to reread it like immediately, you know? I do feel like there's something really special about rereading books at different times of your life because you connect with different things. And so I need to let a little bit more time go by before I read this book again, but I love it. I'm staring at a huge stack of books right now, so many of them being my favorite reads or just my comfort reads. And let me know if you guys, actually, no, tell me what your guys' comfort read, comfort book is. I want to know. Of course, I want to reread these, but I'm always looking for new books to read and enjoy. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, comment down below what's something like summary. Comment down below the umbrella emoji so I know who made it all the way to the end. I think that's going to be it from me. I hope you guys are having a great day and a great reading month, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!